You're listening to the Doctor Is In podcast, brought to you by MartinClinic.com. During the episode, the doctors share a lot of information. As awesome as the info may be, it is not intended to diagnose, cure, treat, or prevent any disease. It's strictly for informational purposes.
So, Brand, if you have any questions, you can start reading them away.
Esther would like to know if there's any help for tinnitus.
Yeah, good question. That's a great question. A lot of people, tinnitus is a lot more common than people realize. I have tinnitus on and off because of an old head injury. So I understand what that's like. You have to determine the cause of it, first of all. A lot of people get tinnitus because of high blood pressure. Other people get tinnitus because of nerve damage. Some people get tinnitus for it could be something even as simple as a candida infection. So there's a lot of reasons for tinnitus, but yes, there are ways to manage and get rid of tinnitus. In fact, there are a lot of people associated with Martin Clinic that are using Navital, and they'll tell us that their tinnitus has gone away or it's down to next to nothing. So that's a very common thing that we hear as well about tinnitus. That works well. But again, you want to find out the root cause. If you got high blood pressure, I would bring your blood pressure down, and that will most likely help with the tinnitus as well. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add on there, Dad?
But we talked about it in the last few days as we've been going over on live. We've been talking about tinnitus being on check the engine or check your engine light when it comes to insulin. And some patients, a lot of patients over the years have said once they have really watched their diet, got their insulin down, usually with the combination of Navital, their tinnitus was better. It can be a real pain. I mean, for some people, it never goes away. It's never fun. But like you say, get to the root cause of it. If you can, try and address that issue. You know, even blood pressure, if you look at high blood pressure.
And cortisol, right? Cortisol, yeah. High cortisol can cause that as well for people. Yeah. So those are the things that I would look at as well. Yeah. All right, Brandy.
Kristen is wondering, why do I lose hair when fasting, and what should I do?
Stop fasting.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing,
well,
right?
For some people.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's a good thing to point out. We talk a lot in generalities, right? We'll do what we call, my dad and I are big believers in the 80-20 rule. We'll talk in generalities, things that we know will benefit 80-90% of the people, but not everybody benefits from everything. And fasting, for some people, their body, it doesn't respond well to it. Most people, they feel fantastic, or they notice improvements in metabolic health, energy even, and fasting helps them control their appetite, stuff like that. And so fasting is fantastic for them. But there are some people that don't do well fasting. Some people, their thyroid is super sensitive and slows down when they're fasting. But that's a rarity. But again, obviously, if your hair's falling out and you know that that's from fasting, if you could say that that's from fasting, because that's another thing. There are, we did a video on our website a while ago of all the main reasons why hair falls out. Thyroid being a big one of it, digestive enzymes being another reason, stress, obviously cortisol is a big reason, gut health is another reason. Then there's some iron deficiency is another reason. Lack of protein intake is another big reason. So there are other reasons. If you can go through those things and say, hey, listen, that's not what's causing it, I'm pretty sure it's fasting, then I honestly, I wouldn't fast. It's as simple as that. But I would go to our website, find that video, look at the causes of that first and see if anything else makes sense first. And then in that case, address it. Most people, though, it's thyroid, iron, digestive issues, cortisol. Those are the ones usually. So I would look at that and then see if that makes sense. If not, then don't fast. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Dad?
Well, I think you hit them all. And one of the big things too is, and a lot of women are like this because they don't realize how little protein they actually consume. You know, they like salads, and I always like to tease women about chicken and salad. And not that it's bad for you, but if you want hair, you better have protein. And a lot of women just don't get enough protein. They don't they don't eat enough protein.
No.
And when they're fasting, of course, you're not eating at all.
Well,
But
and
anyway,
that's a great point, because one of the things that we try to tell people when they're fasting is that because you're shortening your eating window down, because you're bringing your eating window down, it doesn't decrease the amount of protein requirements that you need in a day. It just means that you have less hours to get them in, right? So if you were used to getting 25, 20, or 30 grams of protein for breakfast and you skip breakfast, you still need to get that into your day. So that's one of the things people have to pay attention to when they fast, is they have to have a little bit of a plan to make sure they're getting enough protein. And so I would say, and that is a great point by you, is that I would say that the reason why the hair might be an issue when fasting is because I would look at your protein intake for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Brandy.
Is gelatin and glycerin in vitamins okay?
Yeah. I mean, it's here's the thing about any real supplement is when you build a formula out, you can't fill a capsule completely. There's a few reasons why. The machines, you can't. A lot of times too, the dosage may not fill a capsule, the density of the nutrient being used and the space it takes up and stuff like that. So you can't have a capsule that you can shake on the inside. You can't do that. So you have to fill it with something. So you try to always fill it with something that is not going to cause any health effects in people, right? So you always want to look at that. Sometimes people put junk as fillers, and there are some crappy stuff out there that I wouldn't put in a filler. But gelatin is pretty, again, where do they get the gelatin from, all that kind of stuff, right? There's other issues to look at, but yeah, you can't have a filler free anything. Like, it's kind of funny. We live in a world where there's certain buzzwords, keywords, and no fillers and no this, no that. But most of the time when you consume something, unless it's whole food, you have to put something in a capsule so that it fills the capsule. You just can't have a transparent or an empty capsule. They just don't allow those to leave you can't do it. Even when it comes to the production of them, it just doesn't work. So, but that's a good question, because a lot of people do ask that stuff. I would watch out for crap fillers, but yes, I wouldn't get too concerned about that. Go ahead, Brandy.
Bonnie would like to know, what is the best supplement to take if you want to replace a salad or your greens?
That's a good question. Well, Dad, you talk about this a lot, so you want to answer this one?
well, I like, I love our Blood Boost. Really good, because it's got everything in there. It's, it's complete. There's no multivitamin like it, because, I mentioned it last week. All of the nutrients we picked in there, all the vitamins, whatever, all chelated. They're all ready for absorption and really high quality. I mean, when you look at what's in a salad, for example, like what is in a salad that's so good for you, right? Well, it's vitamin K1. But I'll tell you, and I say this all the time, K1's all right, K2's better.
Yeah, K2's better.
So you're better off to get vitamin K2. So if you take our vitamin D, we put the best K2 in the world in there, the MK7. It's the most absorbable of all your vitamin K2s. And the importance of that is that K2 takes calcium and puts it where it belongs.
Yeah, I always tell people K2 is like a traffic cop.
Yep.
It directs it.
It directs that calcium, because what are the people, still the number one selling supplement. People, I don't know if people know this or not, but still number one is calcium. Because if you talk to a doctor, they'll tell you, tell every woman on the planet, take a calcium supplement for your bones. The problem is that supplement never gets to your bones.
No.
And, for a lot of reasons, but without K2, you need vitamin K2 to bring that calcium. So think of what that does for hardening of your arteries. You don't want calcium in your blood vessels.
No, and that calcium score in the blood vessels is, you're right. I mean, we've said this before, and there's been different articles looking at it, that the supplementation of calcium, I think we're going to look back on that, and that without without having the proper stuff in it will be a mistake. The body naturally regulates calcium. You have your parathyroid glands, and calcium is necessary to live. So you'll pull it out of bone to put it into your blood, vice versa. And if you don't get enough vitamin D, magnesium, boron, selenium, all these other things, you could take calcium all day and it ain't going to fix your bones. It's just not going to do it. Plus my theory, which is not worth anything.
Sure it is.
I can't even buy a cup of coffee with my theory, but my theory is that you can't separate osteoporosis and sarcopenia. They go hand in hand. It's impossible to have bone loss without muscle loss, and vice versa. Somebody that has healthy, strong muscles, not muscle wasting, doesn't have osteoporosis because it's a system. You can't look at the bones as an isolated system. The bones don't do things on their own. They need things to feed it. They need things to move. They need everything. So it's a full system. You can't just look at the bones and fix the problem in the bones. Usually people have muscle wasting. They have digestive stuff going on, a whole whack of other things. Yeah. All right, Brandy.
How do either of you feel about using a microwave?
Again,
Well,
it's the 80-20 rule, but go ahead, Dad.
Yeah, well, look, in a perfect world, right?
Yes.
If we lived in a perfect world, you probably, here's what I tell people about microwaves. Look, don't overuse it. Don't use it on every meal. You got to heat up and, but if you don't, to use a microwave once in a while, I know it does. If you get it at the high heat, you're killing the enzymes in the food. I understand all that. But like I tell people, what planet are we supposed to go live on? It's pretty hard, to be convenient and get rid of your microwave. I just tell people, don't overuse it.
And it's like the hierarchy of needs, right? It's like, when you start assessing people's health, that's not where you start. Them stopping to use a microwave is not going to fix all their health issues. You start with the most obvious things first, and the big things, the things that are going to move the ship in the most direct things, right? Yeah. You don't want to start tinkering with the paint on the boat if it's going to hit an iceberg. You move the boat. So you worry about the paint and the look of it, everything after. You got to do the most important things first. Microwave is so far down the list of where I would start. I would look at all the big things that we do know first. And as you start to fix things, you can go down that path and say, okay, let's look at this, let's address this. But that's when it comes to health, again, it depends where you're at on your journey. I agree. Throw things on the stove, cast irons, all those things are so much better for you. But again, if you're going to hit an iceberg, that's not where I would start. I definitely would look at other things first.
Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. We get that asked a lot, right? Go ahead, Brandy.
Do you have any recommendations for gingivitis and gum recession?
That's a great question. Go ahead first, Ed.
Well, I good question, because I was just reading something yesterday on gingivitis and the effect it has on heart disease.
Oh, yeah.
Because of inflammation again. It's you get a bacteria or fungal. I'm a big guy on probiotics. I think there's nothing better than probiotics. I know the probiotics go to your gut, but guess what? They lead there too. There's certain strains that are really good in the mouth against gingivitis. Get a good broad spectrum probiotic. That's why we talk about it all the time. So that, I love oil of oregano for the mouth. It is a great thing to brush your teeth with and to rinse your mouth with, because it doesn't kill all your good bacteria. That's what I like about it. Like, it is an antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, but it's not harsh to the extent, some of the mouthwashes, they kill everything, like alcohol-based mouthwashes. I'd be very careful with that. I know they tell you to use that for gingivitis, but then you're killing all your good guys. I talked about this all this week about, we're being told to wash our hands, but don't use those, like Purell or whatever. Like, the problem with that is that you're killing everything, and you need to have good bacteria and don't over clean. So your mouth is the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
don't be killing your germs, 1,000 times a day, because that's not good. But I like oil oregano, probiotics. Those are my two favorites.
Yeah, and if you look at, again, when it comes to oral health in the mouth, a lot of stuff that happens in the mouth, for example, like gingivitis or cankers, are really an expression of a gut issue that's going on. So like cankers generally, for example, is like either it's a gut issue causing a B12 deficiency, and B12 fixes a lot of cankers, or they got a digestive enzyme issue, and digestive enzymes and B12 will fix cankers in a lot of people. Same thing with gingivitis. There's a lot of times where, like my dad was mentioning, it's a gut issue, it's a probiotic issue, it's an enzyme issue, which also makes, I would definitely take B12. I would be taking Navitol again to help blood flow, anti-inflammatory, all those kind of things naturally. But yes, I would start with the gut out in a sense for gingivitis.
And don't feed the bears.
Yeah.
Don't watch your sugar intake.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, Brandy.
Deb would like to know, how long does it take your insulin resistance to go down, and how quickly does it come back?
Insulin resistance. So again, let's go on one side of the scale. You have a diabetic person's been diagnosed with diabetes, meaning that their insulin resistance was so bad that they couldn't control their blood sugars anymore, because blood sugars are a reaction of long-standing problems with insulin, right? So you have, on one side, you have a type 2 diabetic, and then on the other side, you have somebody who's like pre-diabetic or a metabolic syndrome. They're not quite diabetic. How long does it take to fix it? Well, I just saw a study that could take as little as 7 days if the problem's addressed. But we tell people with that, when it comes to insulin resistance, that you're not cured, you're in remission. And if the same conditions that were there before come back, it's going to come back. So if a person consumed way too many carbs or crappy carbs for their tolerance, and they have too much of a cellular energy, basically the cells just don't like it, it's going to come back again. But you can reverse or bring into remissions diabetes fairly quickly. Studies show anywhere between 7 and 21 to 4 weeks, 5 weeks, depending on how you're doing it. And liver fat, same thing. You can add liver fat in 7 days, and you can take it off, and you can take off some liver fat in 7 days. So the body, one thing with the body, you give it the right stuff, it wants to fix itself. It wants to get better.
Yeah.
Do you want to add anything else to that, Dad?
Well, just your two studies. We the positive one is within 6 or 7 days you start to affect in a positive way insulin resistance.
Yeah.
Just shows you how wonderful it is if you really watch your carbs. And secondly, crappy carbs and those crappy vegetable oils. The other one is on the how fast you can go south. And 12 days, they're saying 12 days. I read a study this week that in 12 days your metabolism can head the wrong way.
Yeah.
So just go on 2 cruises or a 2-week cruise.
Yeah, not no more.
And you could be in trouble metabolically. Now, the nice thing is you can change that, but it doesn't take long the other way either. Like 12 days, and you're starting to affect your metabolism and even your brain. They were showing in 12 days you can change the structure negatively on your brain with sugar.
Yep. A lot of people are going to have quarantine brain when this is over.
It's hard not to eat when you're in quarantine.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, I don't care who you are. It is difficult to maintain any kind of positive routine throughout this thing. People may still be exercising every day, but they're not moving around as much, and their eating habits are messed up right now. No question. All right, Brandy.
Allie would like to know, do we discontinue our vitamin D during the summer or just cut back on the dosage?
Again, great question. So here's how I would answer that question. We know that probably 90% of people are routinely low in vitamin D. If you are a person who gets out in the sun every day in the summer, where your arms and your legs and your face are exposed every day, then you're probably pretty good, and you can eliminate that. For a lot of other people, we would tell them to probably cut down to about 4,000 IUs of D3 in the summertime, and then let the sun do the rest of it. That's what we would recommend, just based off the fact that most people aren't in the sun every day in the summertime. And we need the sun, we need vitamin D3, there's no question. Look at COVID, look at COVID-19. It's so funny. When this all came out, dietitians came out with their big proclamation that there's no food that can help in the prevention of COVID-19, and there's no supplement that can help. Well, boy, they jumped the gun on both of those pretty quickly, because less than a few weeks after, how many studies have come out now showing the directly how much vitamin D status can impact the person's ability to keep it mild and survive it compared to somebody who's very low. And diet-wise, if people can eat themselves to the point where they ruin their immune system, they could definitely eat themselves to the point where they strengthen their immune system. So they jumped the gun on that. It was in my opinion, a very irresponsible and dumb thing that they put out. I don't know what they were thinking. They're supposed to be the food people. But anyways, that's another rant for another time. But at the end of the day, to me, vitamin D is honestly one of the most important biomarkers for your health. You want to have a very good, healthy level all the time. And if you're not out in the sun every day, then I would probably supplement still in the summer. I know what I do in the summer. I'll tell you what I do. I take 12,000 IUs roughly every day. And in the summertime, I'll take 4,000 to 8,000. And then I'll get out in the sun if I can. And if I'm not too worried about my levels slipping too much. Dad, I don't know if you have anything else you want to do.
I agree with that. I mean, the best way to find it would really to know is if you could routinely get your vitamin D levels checked, but that doesn't happen, at least in Canada. It's very difficult. The doctors are reticent to even prescribe the blood test. And, if you had a blood test, you realize, but like Tony Jr. said, like when you analyze that, about 90% of the population are low in vitamin D.
Well, and optimally low, right?
It's a hormone.
Yeah.
It's not even a vitamin like that. Like for me, I always argue with people because, doc, it's a fat soluble vitamin. I know that, but it really isn't a vitamin because you can't live without vitamin D. You're a solar panel. Your body, every cell in your body wants vitamin D to work properly. So I get it. It is, no, the waiting rooms aren't being filled with people, the emergency rooms are not being filled with people sitting there going, I'm waiting to see my doctor because I'm sick because I took too much vitamin D. No. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite.
Well, do you remember when that one article came out where that one guy overdosed, and it just freaked people out, and there was no context to the thing or nothing, right? There was no history to the guy. Yeah, it was their guy. What was his context?
You know what he had? Kidney stones.
Yeah. Anyways, listen, public health, when this is all said and over, they're going to have to answer for a lot of things that they've done. But you got to remember, public health officials forever has been telling people to stay out of the sun. And now the very same thing that they're telling people to do is the very same thing that strengthens your immune system to help people.
And it kills the virus.
Yeah, it's a kind of a funny thing.
Kills the virus.
Yeah, we try not to comment too much on what's going on with COVID-19 because you don't want to get me.
Because Brandy gets started.
Yeah, you don't want to get me started on that. Anyways, all right, next question, Brandy.
Diane would like to know, nodules on the thyroid, could it be from estrogen overload?
Yeah, for sure. And you got to remember what nodules are. Nodules is usually an indication that it's not working properly or it's working too hard to do the same job, right? Like that's what happens. That's the body will produce these things. Estrogen dominance is a definite cause of thyroid issues for a lot of women. It might even be cortisol and estrogen dominance are probably the two most common causes of thyroid issues in women. No question. So yes, if a person has a long-standing issue with estrogen dominance, it's going to cause the thyroid to overwork and get messed up. And just because the thyroid's overworking and put in nodules doesn't mean that you're not going to have hypothyroid symptoms, because it's just not doing its job properly. So it's working a lot harder to do anything. So yes, 100%. That's a good question, because as we talked about in videos or in our Metabolic Storm program, estrogen and thyroid, we used to tell people that it's the hidden cause of thyroid issues for a lot of people, which is estrogen.
And one of the things that happens too, and just to go back to probiotics, the part of that importance, if you got leaky gut, can affect your thyroid because you're not going to convert the T4 to T3. So, and that can have an effect on nodules. So always look, I'm a big guy, look at the gut, look at cortisol, look at elsewhere from the thyroid, look at your insulin.
Yeah.
Because the liver is a huge place for your hormones. So anyway, lots of things to look at for that.
Yeah. All right, Brandy.
Suzanne's been trying to get this question answered for the last couple of weeks now.
Okay.
She's
we'll try not to disappoint.
Yeah, it's my fault, guys.
Okay.
She's wondering what might be the underlying issue with migraines caused by eating chocolate, beans, and foods with sodium nitrate.
Yeah, so it could be a simple.
I answered that question, didn't I, Suzanne? I thought I did on last Friday or whatever during question and answer. Anyway.
Apparently you didn't answer it well enough. So
well, maybe that's right. I didn't.
Yeah, you might not have. You answer a lot of questions, so it's hard to. We won't fault you for not remembering.
I remember seeing that question though.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and the reason is because a lot of times migraines triggered by a specific food is actually a sensitivity to that food, and you shouldn't be eating it. And it's as simple as that. It's the body. Migraine is it's a non-specific symptom, right? I mean, a lot of things can cause somebody comes in and says, I'm getting migraines. We have to ask a lot of questions to get to the bottom of it because there's a lot of reasons why a migraine, it could be for most people as simple as a neck issue, which is a very biomechanical issue for a lot of migraines, no question, right? So a lot of people are going around with these migraines that they got just a bad neck first, right? So that's a common thing. Like as I mentioned, for you, if you're noticing a pattern of migraines after those specific things, then you've got a sensitivity to those things, and it might be a histamine issue. It might just be a flat out food insensitivity or a food intolerance to that, and I would avoid them.
Chocolate too. One of the things that I find they're estrogen dominant.
Yeah, you're right, and. Dark chocolate is a common one for migraines. Bananas, strangely enough, as well for a lot of people cause migraines. So yeah, I would avoid them if that's the case. And then that also tells you something else, which is important to understand. That tells you that you have a definite underlying gut issue that you have to be on top of all the time, because it tells you that that there are some permeability issues in the gut lining. There are some so there's stuff that you want to stay on top of, which is enzymes and probiotics as well. All right, Brandy.
Elaine would like to know if there is a connection between vertigo and your diet.
Yep. So the two most common causes of vertigo is biomechanical, neck, suboccipital area, very common. Any inflammation in the suboccipital area, which is just the area just below there. If you push here and you're really sore, there's a good chance it might be coming from that. And the second biggest cause is, and a lot of research points this out, is insulin resistance. Definite people that have high insulin resistance have vertigo for blood flow issues, for nerve issues as well, because high insulin resistance will affect the nerves. Yes, absolute. Anything else you want to add to that, Dad? But usually that's the top two causes that we talk about a lot.
Yeah, and sometimes you can get, I remember there was sort of a run on this. Remember a couple of years ago there, vertigo, and it can be post-viral or viral.
Oh yeah, and that you're right. Post-viral is a big one, and some medications cause it as well, right? We can't discount, like when some people used to come to, like for me when I was doing injuries and stuff like that, and they were vertigo, I would definitely ask what medications they were on, because some medications can cause that. But you're right. You're right. When that was a couple of years ago, maybe 6 years ago.
It came in.
Yeah, a lot of vertigo post-viral.
Get out of bed. Get out of, fine the night before. Get out of bed. Got a virus in the middle ear. Attacked the middle ear. They had vertigo. But one of the things, like just on, by the way, one of the things that we used to see a lot with vertigo was low levels of B12, low levels of vitamin D. Both of them have a lot to do with proprioception, just balance, you know, and B12, you know, these are just sort of a finicky vitamin at the best of times. A lot of people are low in them, and then, you know, they can, you know, after a period of time can develop vertigo. And so those are things that I look for, you know, deficiencies too. But, you know, I think we, you know, viral, neck, you got to look at all that stuff.
Yeah. All right, Brandy.
Bobby says, it's almost impossible to totally eliminate sugar from my diet. Is there a safe gram amount to stay under?
Again, sugar is a broad word, right? Like outside of fruit, for example, there's so much research showing that you don't want to consume fructose. You definitely don't want to be drinking fructose. How many studies in the last 2 weeks that have come out about different aspects of fructose type sugars on everything from kidney health to, you know, like, yeah, you just don't want to consume that.
Yeah. Uric acid.
Yeah, like everybody's so different. There's not like, if you stay under this many grams, you're good, because that can mean so many things. Are you diabetic? Right? If you're diabetic, you definitely don't want to be, you want to do your best to keep it down to virtually nothing or as low as possible. If you're a person who is healthy, works out, lifts weights and everything, that's a different number, right? So it is, and I agree with you. It's very hard because, you know, like here's the thing. Food companies have gotten away with, for the longest time, putting the stuff in grams. Grams means nothing to people. So 20 grams, what does that even mean? It's hard to visualize, you know, and those things spread across the internet when somebody puts the amount of sugar in a soda and they take a picture of it, right? Because that sticks with you. They should have a teaspoon rating on the label for sugar. If it's 4 teaspoons, they should have to put 4 teaspoons of sugar so that you could see visually, holy cow, that's a lot of sugar, right? So that's one way food companies have gotten away with it. They keep it in grams, because grams doesn't mean anything. You look at 6 grams, what does that even mean? But if they had to visually put it up, it would be a whole different story. And another smart thing they've done, and you got to give them credit, is they've come up with 50,000 names for sugar. There's so many different ways that they can classify something as sugar. So they're smart. You look at the ingredients and they've listed sugar 6 different ways. Like, it's just, that's the way it is. And I agree. But the more real food, the more whole food that you eat, the less sugar naturally you're going to consume. There's nothing, it's not in real food. But again, we live on planet Earth. My dad and I say this all the time, and we understand that. If you're diabetic, you can't. But if you're not, you live on planet Earth. We understand that.
I don't like numbers either.
No,
I don't like numbers because, like you say, grams. You know, they don't mean nothing.
No.
You know, look, I've tried to make the case over the last several years, and you and I have talked about this so much. You know, we live in a different world today, and if you think how toxic sugar is, if you figure out how your body works, and especially in this day and age, when insulin is at the root, really, of almost everything you can think of, including COVID-19, sugar fuels COVID-19. It does. There was a study that came out today that actually that virus needs that sugar. Craziness.
Oh yeah, most things do, from cancer.
So I tell people, you know what? I had cookies and ice cream too, you know, when I was a kid. And don't live on it. That's what I tell people today. Not anymore. You got to get your kids away from it, because kids today got cognitive issues, they got liver issues, they got insulin issues, young compared to the generation I grew up with. So we live in a crazy world. I would just cut it down. Like Tony said, different for everybody, but there's very few people anymore, I don't care who you are, that get away with sugar. They don't, because it's all around us. Like, it's hidden. The food industry, they're liars, pants on fires.
Yeah.
That's who they are.
Well, they got public relations that promote everything.
Sugar is addictive. It's worse than smoking, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, Brandy.
Was that a good rant, Brandy?
No, I don't like talking about COVID. Does protein trigger an insulin response or just sugars and crappy carbs?
Well, listen, everything triggers an insulin response because it's a food, but protein is definitely, I mean, I would not worry about the insulin response of protein ever. Never. Protein.
You can have 5 steaks and you ain't gonna.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't
don't
worry
worry
too
about your
much.
pancreas.
No, that's right. It's not because I mean, insulin is a food hormone, so everything you put in your mouth and swallow, for the most part, is going to cause a spike in insulin because it's a food hormone. So anything that gets broken down, but protein takes a long time to break down, right? It's very slow. It got to sit in the stomach for a long time. It's a slow burn, even the protein, and plus, protein takes more energy to break down, right? Protein requires more calories to break down than carbs or fat do. So protein has a definite thermogenic effect, if you will, on as well. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about the insulin response. Now, if you're having steak and potatoes and or mashed potatoes and all that stuff, that's a different ball game. But it's not the steak. For years we blamed butter for the bread problem, and we've blamed steak for the French fries or potato problems, right? So, all right, Brandy.
Suzanne would like to know, how much good fat should we eat each day in our food, especially if we are lean and not overweight?
That's a good question. Now, I don't like using the term good fats personally because a fat's a fat. The only time I would say something's a bad fat if it's a vegetable oil, crappy fat that's just highly inflammatory and highly oxidative stuff. But people will say bacon's bad fat, even though it's got the same stuff in it that olive oil does, right? You call one good and one not. But if you have, so we talk about this all the time, right? When it comes to the amount of fat, so you got to remember, when somebody goes ketogenic or they get on this reset diet that a lot of people are on right now, fat is still got to be digested. It's still energy. It's still intake of energy, right? So a lot of people fail when they do, if they're doing it for weight loss, especially, they fail early on because they're consuming too many added fats, right? They're putting butter in their coffee. They're adding all this extra fat, and it's still a ton of energy that has to be consumed. So, but the good thing about doing fat early is it helps you get fat adapted quicker because you're not hungry, and it just helps. But so the idea is that if you want to bring your fat down, if you're trying to lose weight, protein high, I'm not saying low fat, but bring it down to what you normally would do in terms of adding all this extra fat in there. And then if you're lean, like you said, then you can bring your fat content right back up again, and be thankful you can put extra butter on a lot of things and do all those kind of things, and you're going to be absolutely fine. There's no magic number. Each person is different. Each person can tolerate a different amount, but we always tell people when they go ketogenic, you can start higher fat, bring the fat down, and then you could bring the fat back up again after. But that's what we'd recommend.
Yeah, and the other thing too, just like Tony Jr. always says, when you want to make rat chow, it's fat with the carbs, right? Yeah. It's like poutine. You know what I mean?
It's hydrogenated fatty stuff, right?
Yeah, and cheese is good on the poutine. It's the French fries. But if you put the two together,
yeah.
So generally, if you're very healthy, you're going to be, if you're part of the 12% that's metabolically well, good for you.
Yeah.
Just understand that the Martin Clinic, we generally are talking to people that are in that 88%,
yeah, that
are unwell metabolically, and for them, they got to be extra careful. And usually, if your goal is only to lose weight, that's different, because then especially if you're a woman, you got hormones, you got everything in a woman wants to hold on to fat. Everything. You know, it differentiates the sexes. But so you got to be very careful. Like, it's not calories, but, you know, like you might have to cut back, like Tony said. You know, you got to be really, but if you're metabolically well,
Yeah.
you
how's
get
your
away
energy
from a lot
levels?
more, you can have more fat. Like,
Yeah.
and listen, fat don't make you fat, and fat don't do any of that. But it's usually when you're unwell metabolically, you got to be careful with everything. I mean, you know, until you get right.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, Brandy.
Rosa would like to know, are nightshade vegetables good for us or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was always a guy against that nightshade. I remember reading that, and I'm not kidding you. The first time I ever saw nightshade vegetables came out was in the 1970s when I was in school. And I just about went through the roof when somebody differentiate nightshade. You know why? Because that came from one guy. It was like, I think we talked about, was it last week, Tony? We talked about eating for your blood type.
Yeah, eating for your blood type.
You know, and some of the nonsense that comes after, like, if you say a lie long enough, people will believe it. Like, nightshade vegetables are bad. They give you inflammation. They're acidic. And what? Like, that's not true.
But it's funny. That's for a while, especially, I don't hear that as much anymore, but for a while, that was one of those things that can start a fight at a nutritional conference, right? It was,
you know, but it always starts with, you know, it's like the guy who just wrote a book on lectins, okay? And he's the only guy I ever seen in the universe ever write about it. I didn't say he didn't have some good stuff. But to him, lectins causes warts on your nose to cancer.
Yeah.
Like, it causes everything.
Yeah, it's like
I don't
it's
buy
not that simple.
No.
I wish it was that simple. It'd be easy to just tell people.
Anyway, that's me on the nightshades. I never bought it.
Dad, I did not know you were this passionate about nightshade vegetables.
Yeah.
I
stay up at
I don't know,
night.
after all these years, I've managed not know that you were this.
You wonder why I got issues? It's
I didn't know.
Vegetables.
This is honestly, I don't know how I didn't know this until this point. I didn't know that you were this, like you were ready to take up a sign and go out in the streets over this. I did not know that at all.
That and COVID, Brandy.
I didn't know that, so that's great. I learn something new every day, Brandy.
Anyway.
Well, you're welcome for that.
It gets my blood pressure up.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Nightshades. That's like a trigger word.
Grace would like to know, read about red meat being inflammatory. Since I have rheumatoid arthritis, should I stay away?
No, I mean, that's definite.
I'm not going to say a word. I'm just going to go.
Yeah, Brandy always knows. She'll always comment on a Facebook post. She goes, I know what Dr. Martin's going to say, fake news. That's fake news. Red meat is not inflammatory. I would argue, in fact, it's completely the opposite. Red meat, especially steak, is a superfood. It's got more nutrients per square foot than almost anything else on the planet does. There's no question. Red meat is not inflammatory
at all.
At all.
It's anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, it's
a pill.
Yeah,
it's a pill. Farmers, you owe the Martin Clinic money.
Yeah.
Because we're your best friends.
Yeah.
Again, no, listen, I get it. You know, again, if you go back and look at the history, I've been around a long time. You go back and look at the history where they started coming after red meat. They started coming after
bacon. That was food companies.
That
was Doctor.
Yeah,
that was
Kellogg's.
That was Kellogg's, and trying to get you to stop eating bacon and eggs for breakfast and have you eat Special K and whole wheat toast, right? So that's what that is.
But yeah, no. Cancer, eat steak.
Yeah, and
quit eating chocolate bars.
Yeah, I wouldn't honestly, like, that's a big misinformation campaign that has a lot of agenda behind it, and it's honestly that's fake news. Unfortunately, it's just no other way to say it. It's not true. All right, Brandy, now you got me triggered.
That was my goal for today. I wanted to trigger both of you.
I'm triggered. Now I'm angry.
What can be done to help with Alzheimer's disease or help get rid of plaques on the brain?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a that's a timely
We have
question.
such a good course, though, Tony, on the brain, right?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend going to our Age Proof Your Brain video, because in there we talk about the number one cause of Alzheimer's in most people, probably well over 50%, has to do with a lifelong issue of chronic high circulating insulin and messed up glucose metabolism in brain cells, which you got to remember, insulin resistance in the brain will shrink. It will absolutely shrink the brain faster. It's going to have a bigger effect on brain health, brain metabolism. So that's first and foremost. I would 100%, I'd get your food in line first. So if you go back, my dad and I do this all the time. We like to reverse engineer things. So if you look at Alzheimer's, dementia, brain plaquing, all those kind of things, go one step removed from that, you're going to have, at that point, you're going to have inflammation, right? So inflammation in the brain shrinks the brain faster. And the number one cause of that, in our opinion, is high circulating insulin. In fact, I think research is starting to show this more and more, but Alzheimer's and dementia is really a type 3 diabetes. It's a type 3 diabetes. So, and then the second big thing is leaky gut, leaky brain. Research is showing that the very same probiotics that help plug the holes in your gut also plug the holes in your blood-brain barrier. You can't discount sleep. When you're sleeping, your brain, the plumbing gets rid of all that toxic waste. And if you're not sleeping well, lifelong not sleeping well again will shrink your brain faster. And then the other thing is, you can't dismiss as well as oxidative damage, free radical damage to the brain. But again, I would strongly recommend going and watching that video, How to Age Proof Your Brain, because we talk about all those things, what to do, how to eat. No question, that's where I would go for that.
And the supplements we talked about, okay, on that video are really important. I'll tell you something, high DHA.
Yes.
Someone calls you fathead, take it as a compliment. You want fat, and high DHA is what your brain is made up of. So that oil, specifically omega-3, that particular oil, you want, and they've shown studies with high DHA and curcumin.
Yeah, you want to take them both, because curcumin.
I love them both together.
Yeah.
B12.
Big time B12, vitamin D3, and pine bark extract. Navital. Is what we would do for brain. Yeah, Navital for sure is what we do. All right, Brian, we have about 11 minutes left. So we'll try to go a little less. Short. Yeah, we'll try not to rant as long on a. So don't trigger.
And don't talk about nightshade vegetables.
If you talk about nightshade vegetables and steak, then we're going to be here for a long time. So just.
Esther wants to know, what is a safe amount of cortisol control to take if you have a ton of adrenal symptoms?
Well, my dad can answer this well, but we have some people that are taking quite a bit of it every day. Well, Dad, I mean, why don't you tell them? Because we hear people
take, they're going through some severe anxiety. They can't sleep. You name the symptom of anxiety or depression. And I've had to coach people 12. I can think of a few ladies where I've had them, going through an acute stage, taking 12, 14 of those capsules a day, because that's what made them get through it. So there's no real side effect to it. I've never seen anything. It doesn't dope you out. It's not, it's not like I realize that it balances your cortisol, but somebody said, oh, I have low cortisol. Well, yeah, but it still helps, because whether it's low or high, it's an imbalance of cortisol.
Yeah, it helps modulate it better.
Balance the cortisol. Yeah. So again, everybody, but if you're not sure, don't be scared to ask the question in the group. That's why we have the Martin Clinic Facebook group and all that. You can ask the question, and by the way, there'll be other people will say, what, for me, that really helped when I took 6 a day.
And that's one of the things I like about the group, is because people will share what they're doing and what's working for them, right? So that's great. Okay, Brandy.
Elizabeth would like to know, how can I get rid of skin tags?
Skin tags Skin tags is the number, like, surprisingly, right? Skin tags are caused by, for most people, high circulating insulin, no question. So that is the more skin tags, that's a definite sign. That's a check engine light for high circulating insulin. So that's that for sure. That I would say that is the thing I would address for sure. So I would bring down insulin, and then I would look at taking like our insulin balance or something, but I would definitely control insulin. Okay, Brandy.
Marlene would like to know, can I take my B12 without food?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. And especially, well, think about it. If you're taking B12, you better be taking it sublingual.
Yeah, you better be under your tongue anyways.
So you really don't want food, at least not at the
I
same
haven't mastered
time.
the ability yet to eat my food and keep it under my tongue.
You do have it?
No, that's what I'm saying. I can't.
Oh, okay.
So I gotta, it's a good, it's a good trick for people too as well. Like to take it like near the end of a meal so that because by the time that thing dissolves, it's like, am I still hungry? Right. So, all right, Brandy.
What is your opinion on eating beets?
I hate beets, but
Yeah.
they're good for you.
They're so good for you. Like, I mean, one of my favorite shows is The Office, and obviously Dwight Schrute talking about the beet farm, and he eats them like an apple. I wouldn't personally do that, but they're great for nitric oxide. I mean, beets definitely are one of the nature's best ways of bringing up your nitric oxide levels.
And
So
there's hardly any sugar in beets.
no,
That's why they taste so bad.
they're everything that they was everything in the way they were made is to tell you that like you got to really want to eat beets. In my opinion, they're not the thing that people run to first, but yes, they're very good for you for sure. Okay, Brandy.
Lorraine says, when we were young, our mom used to cook our eggs with the bacon fat and we loved it. Is that good?
Yep, 100%. Bacon fat is a great, if you cook a lot of bacon, just keep it and use it for everything else. It's fantastic for sure. And it adds a ton of flavor to it. No question. Yeah, baking is, even if you like grill up vegetables or something after, just use
A lot of oleic acid.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Brandy.
What do you think about hemp oil?
Yeah.
Don't smoke it.
Yeah, it's good for you. Again, for sure, it's good for you. But here's the thing that we tell people all the time when it comes to flaxseed oils or hemp seed oils. The way that our diets are, we have 18, 19, 20 to 1 ratio of omega-6 consumption to omega-3 consumption. The foods, the oils, everything are omega-6s. So we have no problem getting omega-6 in our diet. We don't get enough omega-3. So when somebody's taking a lot of these extra ones that are higher in omega-6, and they're not getting enough omega-3, that ratio goes further apart. And there's a lot of research showing that the further that ratio gets, the bigger it gets, the more health problems you're going to get, no question. So that's why we like DHA, because of the brain, and there's nothing better inflammation fatty wise that we like. But the reason why we talk also about omega-3s is because people get enough omega-6 in their diets. So if they have a choice between a DHA and a hemp oil, I would take DHA every day of the week. Yeah,
and you're better off to eat hemp seeds than you are to take the oil. The oil can be rancid. It's like flaxseed oil I wouldn't touch. Flax seeds, eating them are good. So anyway, Randy, you're up.
What can you do for toenail fungus?
Oh, that's a good question, because that's an indication that you have a problem internally. That's an external sign of an internal problem.
Yep.
So I would definitely undergo a Candida protocol, no question, which again, you have to look at. When you look at that, you say, well, there's a failure on multiple levels. One is it should never get through the digestive system and into the bowels. And then when it does, it shouldn't survive in the bowels if you have good probiotics. And then if you didn't have leaky gut, it wouldn't get into the blood and it wouldn't show up on your skin. It wouldn't show up anywhere like that, right? So you have that's a long-term address. And then the short term is sometimes you just have to use the nail stuff and just get rid of it, because but that's only a symptom. You're treating a symptom at that point.
Well, think about even the cure or a potential cure. They usually give you a medication that you take.
Yeah.
And it's not just going to your toe.
Yeah, it's not like a laser targeted toe pill.
Yeah,
right?
like it's a systemic medication.
Yeah.
Because they know that fungus is everywhere. It's not just in your toe. That's all you can see. So
but it's a strong
it's leaky gut.
All right, Brandy, one or two more. We'll see.
How to prevent gallstones and kidney stones.
I'll let you
Well,
take
those
this,
are
Brad.
oxalates
Yeah.
mostly. And oxalates, you ladies, because you're salad lovers, okay? I talk about that. Oxalates are salads, chicken and salad, not chicken, but salads. So when you eat, you live on vegetables. Vegetables are wonderful, but don't live on them only.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of oxalates in that. And the other thing is, I talked about it this morning. So if you get a chance, go watch that video. I talked about why we see so much gallbladder problems in this day and age. It is an epidemic today.
And don't downplay the effect that estrogen has on the gallbladder either.
Yep.
All right, Brandy, one more question, I think. One or two, we'll see.
What vitamins will help with anxiety?
That's it. So,
B12.
yeah, we like rapid fire, definitely cortisol control, definitely B12, and definitely magnesium is where I would start. Yeah. And unplug from social media. That's a
vitamin too.
Yeah, vitamin unplug. Go ahead, Brandy, one more. We'll see if we can do this quickly here.
How do we heal leaky gut?
Yeah. So first of all, leaky gut it's an effect, right? There's something that's causing it. So something's killing that bacteria or something has. If you got a history of antibiotic use and you're not doing that anymore, great. Chlorine tap water, over-the-counter pain medications. There are so many things that we do in a day that kill it, which is why it's an ongoing problem for most people in the population, right? So that first, but how do you heal it? Probiotics for sure. Is the number one strategy that I would use to do that. Probiotics, digestive enzymes, definitely. You may even want to do some stuff to help kill off some of that stuff like candida and all that stuff in there.
I love the IBS too, like some of your mucilages and that really coat the stomach and help repair. Glutamine is
and the bone broth protein helps repair it, right?
With bone broth, and that really helps with leaky gut. It really does. It repatches the gut.
Well, and what's interesting with glutamine is, so if you look at like rapidly dividing cells, like your cells of your lining of your gut, they don't live long. They divide quickly. The rapidly dividing cells need glutamine as fuel primarily. So they require a ton of glutamine. If you're not getting enough of it, the cells are just not healthy. So that's one of the reasons why bone broth is so good for gut health, is because it has glutamine in it, and it's it just helps provide the fuel for those cells, which is why glutamine is so good for IBS, stuff like that as well, right? So
even the gelatin in there is good.
Yes, very good for it. Yeah. All right. Is that's good for now, Brandy?
I think so.
Okay. So it's good. I mean, there's a lot of questions left. Dad, you're going to do a Facebook Live tomorrow morning, probably answer some more of those questions.
Talk to me, Brandy.
We're going to do this again next week. It won't be on a Thursday next week because my daughter has her birthday.
Hey, no birthday parties.
Now we're going to have a massive block party. No, so we'll do it again next week. We enjoyed doing this, so we'll keep you updated on the time and when we're going to do it. Questions have been awesome. Thank you. Even though a few of them did trigger us, that's all right. We'll live with that. So again, awesome guys. Thanks for joining us, and we'll do this again next week. Take care.
You've reached the end of another Dr. is In podcast with your hosts, Dr. Martin Jr. and Sr. Be sure to catch our next episode, and thanks for listening.